how do you actually build muscle on keto? If you could lay out maybe a general game plan for somebody listening or watching who wants to put on size and performance and follow a ketogenic diet.
Yeah, so to not to oversimplify it, but honestly, if you are implementing some form of progressive overload and increasing the intensity of your training, whether that be through time under tension, increased intensity, more frequency, more duration, some form of progressive overload, heavier weight, something of that nature, in the context of being in a caloric surplus, even if that caloric surplus is coming from strict ketogenic macronutrient ratios, you will build muscle. That's the way it works. A lot of people try and over intensify it and make it seem like this crazy difficult thing that you've got to manipulate to be done a certain way just to build muscle on keto, and that's honestly not the case. If you're eating adequate food at a surplus to fuel that growth, muscle protein synthesis is going to happen if you're implementing the progressive overload, and you will build muscle. As with anything, it's not going to happen overnight. And a lot of people, they get the mistake of they'll have carbs and they'll gain a bunch of weight. They'll feel a lot stronger because they've got all that water retention, the increase in glycogen storage, and they associate that with an increase in lean mass. And that's just not the case. I mean, if you look at any natural bodybuilder that's following a traditional carb-based approach, they'll tell you that after about 10 years of lifting, any gain that you see in lean mass is very incremental. It's not going to happen overnight. It gets harder and harder to build muscle tissue over time because your body's so used to the different stimuli you subject it to over 10 years of training. Muscle maturity is a thing. And if you're doing that with a ketogenic approach and you're having ketogenic, macronutrient ratios in a surplus and training hard with progressive overload, you will build muscle.
So you say progressive overload on a consistent basis. So that could be either weight or time under tension. How often do you recommend a workout like that each week? And then what role does cardio, if any, play with this process?
So I typically, I train in an 8-day rotational split. So the way I've got it set up for me personally is I train in an 8-day block. I train 6 of those 8 days and 2 days are recovery days. By doing it in an 8-day rotation, I'm not having like leg day, for instance, does not always fall on Monday. I'm able to kind of mix things up so that it just kind of spreads it out and averages out over time. I'm hitting each muscle group twice. So I'm getting, a double frequency with each given muscle group, which is good. You don't want to go, especially after you've been lifting for a while, it's not really optimal to have, a week in between hitting the same muscle group again.
So within those 8 days, you're hitting the same muscle group twice.
Yeah, exactly. So like legs, I have 2 leg days, I have 2 back days, but here's the caveat. With each time I'm hitting, legs, for instance, one day is focused on lifting very heavy. The next day is focused on more of a hypertrophy base, so a little bit more high volume, a little bit less weight, a little bit more repetition, just high volume in general. So by doing that, I'm kind of getting the best of both worlds. I'm stimulating the muscle twice, but I'm having one day primarily focused on just lifting very heavy and one more on hypertrophy. So I'm just kind of hedging my bets and covering all my bases. And that's done really, really well for me. I've been training that way for about the past 2 years, and I've seen more success in that than traditional, one body part a week kind of stimuli.
And how long are those workouts on average?
Usually about an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half, something like that. And as far as cardio goes, I ramp that up in a competition prep. I don't do a ton of cardio, intended cardio in my building phase. I have been running about a mile a day because I just like it. That's kind of my meditation time more so than anything. But you don't want to just kill yourself on the cardio. I would always prioritize lifting and building as much lean tissue as opposed to just spending hours on the treadmill.
And if somebody did do cardio with a strength training workout, do you recommend doing that cardio before the strength training or after?
I like to do it after because if I'm doing cardio, I try to be fairly intense. So I don't like to exhaust myself to the point that my workout would suffer. So I prefer to do it afterwards. And then I'll kind of use that more of as a cool down than a warm up.
I hope you enjoyed that clip on building muscle with keto. As you can see, it can be done. If you want to watch the full or listen to the full interview with Robert Sikes, that could be found on the Keto Kamp Podcast. We jammed out on keto for about an hour. We talked about staying disciplined on keto with your goals. We talked about breaking in a keto plateau, manipulation with your caloric intake, and you could hear more of Robert's story. You could listen to that full interview on any podcast platform worldwide, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. We'll put links down below for you to check that out, and check out all the links and resources down below about Robert. Go connect with him as well. I don't know if you knew this, but I do have a 10-part series on keto. And these 10 videos really help you understand how to follow keto so you can apply it to yourself, so you can downregulate inflammation, burn fat, reset your hormones, and feel good. Stick or tap the screen right there, watch this next video, and learn all about the great land of ketosis.